Hello and welcome to the Winter Q&A live stream. My name is Carneros. I'm the host today. I'm usually the host of the Tuesday night Carneros and Chill show. I'm a nullsec alliance leader and I play the game like you guys do. But 10 years ago, I used to work for CCP. And I know some of these guys from those days. Actually, I know CCP Rattati from those days. Let me introduce you to our guest today. We got up in the corner next to me, we got CCP Rattati. He's a director of product for CCP. How long have you been with CCP?
Hi everyone. I started on my birthday in 2007, 15th of February.
Wow. Okay, it's a long time. Uh,
It's a few years.
when you and I worked together, this was you were in finance a long time ago, and this was before you went to Shanghai or any of that other stuff. Uh,
I've
there's a
I've been
story there.
fortunate enough to play a few roles at CCP and in the gaming industry. So yeah, I started in FP&A, which is more like a planning and modeling uh, group. And yeah, then I moved to Shanghai. Was there for 3.5 years. Came back. Worked a lot on shooters, and eventually found myself working on Eve, which was the reason why I joined in the first place. So it's a good cycle.
Nice, nice. And then we also have CCP Swift and CCP Paragon. CCP Swift, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We just got out of a great meeting with the CSM. I'm sure they'll be talking all about it over this winter holiday. And yeah, I'm just really excited to chat with everyone. I know people have questions about everything coming up, and we get to answer them. And I also really miss hanging out with Eve players. I haven't really hung out with Eve players like personally for like 2 years now. I'm starting to go through withdrawals, so I definitely need like this dopamine hit so I can hang out with you guys.
We missed you at eVegas this year, let me just say.
Next, I only go to the official CCP sanctioned e-Vegases. That's the thing. Just kidding. I'll make sure to go to the next one. Hell or high water, I'll be there.
Sweet, 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 sweet. CCP Paragon, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How long have you been at CCP?
I started not on my birthday, but it was June 27th last year. So been here just about a year and a half. Snorri, I think you're queuing up a bit there. What's up with that? Thank you. So it's been a very interesting year and a half, to say the least, but a lot of fun.
Sweet. And you're an Eve community developer like
Correct.
CCP Swift, right? Okay, great. Well, people came for a Q&A session, and in fact, people gave me a lot of questions to start with. So why don't we jump right in now? First of all, my understanding is this winter update blog that we're kind of referencing is supposed to be read in the context of the July status update blog that came a few months ago. Is this sort of the next one of those? Am I getting that correctly?
Uh, yeah, exactly. So it's a bit different from the kind of economy or ecosystem outlook that we've been running. Uh, we run them when there's like an important update coming, or we want to kind of put something out there. This is more from a total CCP perspective, and I think a biannual is or is that the right thing? Twice a year is pretty good for that. Kind of say where the 2020 like summer, you know, people go on holidays, like tell them what's going to happen, and then another one just before Christmas to see what's happening until kind of FanFest in that sense. Um, it is it's just important also at this time because we're out of the tunnel. It's no longer the end of the tunnel or light at the end of the tunnel. We're looking at you know we've 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 done the hard part. We had to do the hard part. We appreciate players having the patience to do so with us. This was the right thing to do for the third decade, to be, you know, to be ready and kind of embracing new players into a more balanced sandbox. So now it's just, you know, the next difficult thing to do, but more fun, more excitement, more like crazy stuff, more of the things that people have really wanted to do. So we're ready. We've accomplished all of the economic goals that we wanted. So we're ready to roll. We have the bandwidth. We have the resources to give out for the right things to do, for the right attention and the risk and reward. So yeah, we're ready. We're just open to talk about capitals and citadels and tether and new ships, new modules, all that stuff.
We'll
So
get to all
lay
of
it on
those.
us.
Yes. Okay. So over the last few months, we've talked about a three-phase plan, sort of a shortage section, a redistribution, and then a dynamic distribution. Where are we now in that?
We're at the end of the shortage phase, and we've actually started it overlapped because we've already been injecting into the resources into the game. But we're kind of primed for dynamic distribution. And dynamic distribution is basically that space we gave us to be able to give people or the players in SOV the ability to kind of break the rules a little bit. You know,
Okay, great.
the redistribution was taking everything or kind of making sure that there's coverage across the universe geographically, tritanium and high and all that stuff. And now we have the ability, because we've put those limitations into place, and we've lowered inventory, so we know that nullsec doesn't just sit on trillions of tritanium. We're able to now say, okay, if we give you the choice, you're able to start having tritanium a bit at a cost, but you have the choice. So that's the phase, and that's kind of just more like an open-ended. There's no end to that. It's kind of like, okay, we're ready. We we have the checkbook balance to be able to do so.
Okay,
Yeah, the
now you
universe is
mentioned
ready
the
to
stock.
accept new stuff. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Canaris, I cut you off.
Okay, you mentioned the stockpiles and watching that. What are your favorite key performance indicators or KPIs that you track for economic improvement and non-improvement? What are you looking at these days?
We're looking at stockpiles mostly. That was the whole thing for the scarcity phase, because you know, a few years back we had kind of like a trifecta of things that came together and kind of created this situation that we're in today. So they weren't really done together in a way. They were kind of parallel projects that kind of came to be at the same time. But Citadel's coming out is one thing. Oracle coming out, and the and alphas and omegas, like the free to play moment, came at the same time. So with the changes that kind of created a whole new dynamic, and there was a kind of, I would say, this obviously spurred a lot of inflation because it triggered multiple levels of vertical scaling. So it was very easy to now, you had infinite supply, you had almost infinite capacity on some of the mining ships. There's no inventory stopper. Manufacturing jobs were cut loose, basically. So we just see a hockey stick in the economy at that point. And a lot of it went into building new ships, driving the price down, but also just into stockpiles. And that was a huge problem. We had to deal with them because those who had the stockpiles would still have the upper hand if we simply just pull down the resources or bounties or whatever down to an acceptable level. They would have this advantage. So we had to kind of have that run its course, and now it's done, pretty much on time compared to the original plan. So that's the big thing. We have ship stockpiles, but they will, as manufacturers start to kind of see their manufacturing ship prices get closer to the prices that the owners of the stockpiles hold, we'll start to see them come together, and at some point the stockpilers will have to give in and start selling at the same price as the manufacturer. So we're ready for those things. So basically what we're waiting for now is just that kind of that manufacturing spark, and that's all we're going to focus on. That's what we call the bottleneck removal.
So is if the price is one of your KPIs, is that the one that you think is the least improved right now? The one that you're watching the most? Is that the weakest condition at the moment, is the price of the ships, or are there other KPIs that you're watching that need to improve?
So I think the weakness is the ability to manufacture, not the actual ISK price.
Okay.
Because, like that's just supply and demand. But
Roger.
we
Okay.
think that the bottlenecks are hindering too much the balance of supply and demand. So we're going to try to fix that first, and then see where it gets us.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of that with what it takes to build these things. The dev blog hinted at some changes coming, and one of them was that dreadnoughts need to be sufficiently replaceable for fleet use, for example, to be able to manage the population of super capitals out there by dropping on them. What are your thoughts about how to get the dreadnought in the right, manufacturable?
Um,
You
so
could
yeah,
tell us.
I see them as, or we as kind of the wolves that might be able to keep titans and super capitals in check. But at the moment, the return on investment is not good, and that's based on bottleneck and manufacturing and all kinds of things. So the intent when we did this was to keep the ratios of cost the same. We didn't want to mess with that at the same time. So the blueprints took that into effect to try to keep the cost of manufacturing the same before and after our efforts. So right now we're just dealing with the bottlenecks, but over time, because we have those controls now, we didn't. We couldn't control or try to affect, I would say. We don't control anything in the game. We have the ability to kind of specifically up or reduce the components needed for a specific capital rather than all of them. So it might be something that we go in and try to affect, but we still want to see how all this plays out before we start like moving any dials or needles.
Yeah, that's the one important thing, right? We did such a shock to the system that acting like really quickly could destroy a lot of the hard work that everyone had to go through to get to this point. And just another like really important factor is like not only going through the shortage phase did we like reduce the stockpiles and get ourselves to a successful economy, but we like updated systems. We improved the foundations, if you want to call it that, of the sandbox, so we can build and we can be assured that in the future we don't have to go through something like this. We have the tools necessary to, you know, if we see a problem arise, a big if, we can deal with it with the tools we have now, which is something we couldn't do before. Specifically, like decoupling capital and T1 production, like that was a huge thing. That I think it's easy to forget that because of so many changes that we went through. Like that was monumental, really. And so now we're in this state where, hey, we see a bottleneck in dread production. We can address that without crashing the price of battleships or without like wrecking the ecosystem in
Mhm.
any other way.
Sweet, because good. Now, with recent mining changes, have we seen an uptick in mining? Because it seems to me, from where I sit, we've seen more people jump into mining, and a little bit. We've seen it go up a bit, and you know that's going to create uh, a flow of minerals that are going to need demand for them. Have you seen an uptick?
Uh, yes, and also a just an immediate switch of obviously from like the ships being used, um, and I think Convict, if you can bring up the first picture.
Yeah, so it is up now with you can see the volume of ore mined by ship type. The axis, the y-axis is just like it's linear. It's not like some weird graph magic or anything, but we did kind of like hide a little bit. because we don't want to give too much away. Eve players are a little bit creative that way. And the bottom is just time.
And I don't see it on my Discord. How do I?
Yeah,
Okay.
you would need to have the stream open.
I will open another venue. Wait.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. Over on the far right, guys, you see a tick going up just right at the end, because this is very, very recent.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
so we're looking at 3 years, and we're looking at characters mining, and we're looking at the composition of that. So you can see that on the far left side, you can see Oracles. They're the dark red or ochre. So you can see there's a lot of Oracle pilots out there 2 years ago or almost 3 years ago. You can see the effect of blackout. There's like a small drop there, and then it continued, and then we see the first kind of economic changes affecting that. So you can see the composition also moving from ship to ship. But the important thing here is that what's happening here is that even 3 years ago, at the pinnacle of mining and the pinnacle of the age of the Oracle, it's a very similar number of characters mining. So this is a very good sign, and we're very happy to see this. If you flip to the next one, you'll see what sparked the whole thing. Are you seeing that? Switch.
Not yet.
So that's the volume of ore mined by those said ships. So if you take a look at the other one, you can see that those Oracle pilots were manufacturing more than everyone else combined. And this truly is the problem. And this created the inventories, this created the lower prices, this created the situation where everyone except Oracle pilots were mined out of business in some way. You can also see it by the CPI. The CPI skyrocketed obviously very quickly of minerals because of this specific thing, or it's clear. Once the oracles went down or stopped being used or stopped being able to use the infinite supply, you can see the CPI going crazy, but it wasn't going crazy. It was fixing itself from being crazy. And now it's normalizing. So
Okay.
that's just some insights on that. So if you're looking at, we're looking for what we're looking at, this is the stuff that we're looking at. We're combining all of the MER metrics. We're looking at our own individual dashboards that you don't see or don't have. And so this is one example of that. And maybe later in the stream, I'll show you some more.
Well, this is pretty abstract. When are we going to be able to build dreadnoughts at scale and be able to then, field fleets of them again? Because we can't field fleets of them reliably until we know we can replace them. So what are we looking at? Is that this quarter? Is that by FanFest? Is that 2022?
Specifically, Rick, I rock the question of. Can you repeat the question?
When can we feel confident about our ability to build them at scale so that we can replace a fleet?
Capitals or just anything?
Dreadnoughts, bro.
Dreadnought specifically. I can't say. I can't say. First of all, the central bank doesn't tell you you're going to raise prices until you raise taxes or interest rates or anything. Like they do it when they do it, and we have to behave the same way. Otherwise, we're giving, unfair advantages to some people. So it's going to happen when it happens.
But our goal is absolutely like to make sure that it can happen, right? We don't want there to be a system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't want to be a
Not be a
system where
negative
there's
Nancy,
like
but yeah, we hope so, and it's the first thing that we are working on. We're already working with the CSM on some ways to reduce these bottlenecks.
yeah, and some of the things that came in with the last patch, like it did reduce the cost specifically for the dreadnoughts. Like some of the materials requirements did change. When compression comes around, which is early next year, that'll also solve some of the problems, not all of them. But here's the thing: like we have the knobs, so we can turn them if we see it as a problem. And we can't say, hey, dreads are going to cost X bill. But we can say we want dreads to be replaceable. We want people to be able to use dreads in a meaningful way. I think everyone that's flown in nullsec has had a either flown in or watched dreads do some fun stuff. It takes a lot of coordination. Like these FCs put in a lot of work and they make it look really easy when it works. And we've also seen when it goes horribly, horribly awry. I personally tend to like the latter one because it's usually 40 dreads getting lanced, or it escalates into something crazy. So yeah, absolutely want like these types of ships to have a place in EVE Online.
Okay. Let's swap from trying to push on dreadnoughts and super carriers and stuff. Let's talk about dynamic bounty system. How happy are we with where that is at the moment? Do you feel like it needs tuning at the moment?
It
I'll give
has
you.
been tuned a couple of times, or like more than a few times, and it is definitely working as intended. It doesn't mean that the dials are perfect, but it's something we can easily change or kind of rectify if there's something really bad going on. So we both see and hear players reporting actively hunting for high DPS systems. So people are doing what we hoped would happen, is that they simply use scout like intelligence to go out and try to make more money than they like should be. These are opportunistic, a bit like an ability to be opportunistic for like smaller corporations or roamers or whatever. So it is absolutely working as intended. And that if people are docking when the bounty modifier hits 50%, that's their choice. They can keep working or bountying at 50% because it's still infinite in that sense, and it's still safe because you're close. You're probably close to your own SOV or structure. So that was the intent. If you cut down your forests close to the castle, like you're going to end up with no forests around the castle, and then you just have to go out in the unknown. Whether the actual numbers are 100% perfect or correct, I think that's completely up for debate, and we're happy to talk about it. But we gave a lot of ratters the ability to control their risk better. We've gave him we have the AFK decloaker. No, yeah, the cloaker deployable, and so I think we've given them enough stuff to be able to go out boldly into the unknown or a system beyond the next one.
Yeah, when the crab feature got introduced, I was super greedy. I went into a system with a 180% risk modifier because I didn't want, like, it was far away too, and I didn't want people like stealing my ESS or anything like that. So I was like, I'll just go into this back end system. It's got a great system. No one's gonna care. And then ended up I think held on rage rolled something from like it just landed on me, and I was like, oh, and I felt so bad because I was so far away from everything that I asked my alliance to come save me, and they are super bros, so they did. They were like, we can't let him die. He is our mascot and super jolly. So they formed a fleet, but I was already dead by the time they got into the system, and so they warped onto my wreck, and then all died as well. And I felt super guilty because I was responsible for not only me dying, but everyone else dying. But since I was in a hard dread, I did manage to pop 2 Lokis, so take that. I have a great KDR, but a really bad everything else. But who cares? We take those wins. But I think that's like the type of like actions that we want. And like Rattati said, like the dials might not be perfect, but we can change those dials. If the refractory period to recover is a little bit too long, we can dial that up easy. We don't have to make huge sweeping changes. We don't have to balance every site in the game. It's just like a little knob, and this black box goes off on its merry way. So yeah, absolutely.
I read one of the threads that I read was the DBS, like, is it work as intended thread, And there was a very interesting follow-up conversation within that thread, at least, about maybe more constellation / regional effect as well. So that's a very interesting thing to build on.
Yeah, I think some CSM members also had like a really nifty ideas. We had like a brainstorming session a couple weeks ago of like cool things we can do with this mechanic. And the CSM were like, "Hey, can we do this? Like, can we have it so if you have a certain DBS, then certain sites will come and certain sites won't, and things like that?" And CCP Psych was like, "Yeah, that actually works. Like, we can create that with the systems that we have now. So like, we have so many possibilities that the game designers can utilize." And tweak with and just have fun ideas with. Like these are some of the most creative people in the industry, and we just gave them a bigger box of tools.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, behind the scenes, we have this a numerical attribute that just says like, what's the state of this system? And when I or Berger or anyone talks about dynamic systems, that's kind of what we're aiming for, is that there's a state of a system. We call it the universal state machine, but that sounds very systemy. It means that there's a state that all our systems can be listening to, and it means that, like in that case, you burned down your forest, okay, and the rabbits all died, and the wolves also left, but maybe something else appears, and so you have this ecosystem that's mimicking what happens in real life. Like you do something, there's impact. Now that impact didn't just do bad things, it also brought good things. Maybe if you kill all your mining fields, uh, you know, pirates will show up more because like they see a better advantage or something like that. So we're trying to have a dynamic world where things are actually a bit more realistic, a little less stale, a little less predictable, but not only bad things like, oh, you finished all these things and now you have nothing. It's supposed to be deeper than that and more interesting than that. So now we have this fundamental system, we have this dynamic, uh, and now we can kind of build on that as well. So it's actually very, very cool. This came from actually it started, if I can go off topic a bit. If you what is the name of it? So basically, it's a tiny story I told, I think 3 years ago, when we're looking at the weather systems being introduced, and there is a special, very rare rock that can appear when there's lightning storm in a desert. I can't remember what it's called. Fulgurite, it's called. And that's very rare. You very rarely get lightning storms in a desert, as you might expect. But that can happen when lightning hits a certain type of rock, melts it and fuses it, and it becomes a very special, unique thing. And that's the kind of interesting thing we can also build on, is that when you have weather plus a sunshine incursion and something else, something very rare, something very unique happens that you have now the opportunity to jump on and take for yourself. Or if you're smart and you're following the weather, you're saying, oh, I think it might happen here. So I'm going to be there in 3 days and try to attack the people who are going to take it. So this is the longer term dream that we are chasing, or the vision. Enough
Okay.
storytelling. Let's go.
All right. Well, one of the popular topics to talk about this week in the last couple days has been battleships. You mentioned battleships are more expensive to build these days, and you're thinking about maybe buffing them slightly. That created all kinds of conversations. I actually kind of want to give a shout out to Stitch Canelan for a really nice thread on Reddit. I thought it was really well done. What are your can you talk a little bit more about battleships? Did you see that thread?
Yep. Even though I'm downvoted, I still read it. So yeah, if I can see that it's well constructed and there's some merit in the first couple of discussions, I jump on it and see if there's anything to glean from it. That's like I really enjoy it, and I've always done it throughout my like history. I used to be in finance, just reading all about the e-fantasies with CCP over and like talking shit in the forums, and like I used to think that was the best thing to do and the coolest thing to do was to argue on the forums, our own forums, not Reddit, by the way, back in the day. But yeah, battleships have been the anchor of a lot of the plans. So you kind of need to pick one thing that doesn't move or is everything is based from it. And it's very hard to start from the venture or something which is like everyone can have it, everyone, and kind of messing with that messes with literally everyone, and especially new players. So you don't want to be messing at that end of the spectrum. Titans, no one flies except like the hugely aspirational goals and very few pilots. So you pick something in the middle, and we picked the T1 battleship as the anchor for all of it. And it's kind of like the first aspirational goal as a normal player, not like someone who comes into mining, just like, hey, spaceships, this is a cool thing with big guns, much bigger than the other things. It's a pretty normal goal for a new player. So
Yeah,
if we anchor around that, that was the transition point that we picked for. That's why reactions were introduced at that point. So we had like a difference, a little bit of a meaningful difference in this is manufactured differently because it's a bit more interesting and a bit more aspirational. It's not common in a way. So that's been the anchor, and we monitor it. We track a time to manufacture, time to earn a battleship in income. So we monitor it very well, and that's kind of the crux of the whole thing. So the price is too high at the moment compared to its cost, and that's basically what we identified. And I think there's just consensus everywhere that I've heard is that battleships deserve to be better. It doesn't mean it should be battleships online. It you know maybe they have a counter to hacks or whatever, and kind of fixing killing two birds with one stone. But I'm like, that's up to the team to figure out really, and I trust the team to go talk to the CSM and the community and figure out a good course. My pet project, though, is Navy battleships, because I think they should be much cooler and much better. But I have little to no say in specifics on that. But I've been pushing some ideas for a very long time of making them a bit cooler.
Do they
yeah.
involve you in any of those discussions, the design
No,
team?
I involve myself in discussions, but
You
I
involve yourself.
don't end up in the. I don't
I
author
hear you.
anything, so like in the
I
end,
hear
it's
you.
the guy that authors.
What
So there's
about
a big
have you?
sorry. Oh, sorry, Canaris. I just want to hop in real quick. Like, there's a bit of like a difference in approach too between like faction ships, like the ships like the Stratios, Gilas, like Rattlesnakes. Like we don't want to make them powerful enough or like as powerful as the cost to build, right? Like there are some bottlenecks there. We believe like a lot of them will be starting to be alleviated soon, but if not, we can bump in there and dial them back to bring them like more in line with what they like what they do in the game. But for battleships, we don't want to do that. Like battleships might be a little bit pricier than before, so we want to just make them better, like just flat out. So they have like the value associated with their price instead of that. But it's like a completely different approach than with faction cruisers and stuff like that. But it's absolutely something that is on our radar. Like we see that people can't really build the BPCs. Like they just go out to the LP stores and cash out with the little chips to get the ships instead of building. So that's definitely something we're keeping an eye on, and we can adjust accordingly. Like we have the tools in place to do that. But when I heard about battleships, like the plan for battleships, I got giddy. Like battleships are my favorite ship in Eve. I've got like boomer reflexes, so people like Suetonia and even Stitch and Ibis, they can fly around these small ships with like real fast reactions and get the most out of them. I can't. I can only fly the big slow ships that has a huge buffer for me to deal with. So that's why I got excited. But yeah,
Yeah, everyone,
On that, yeah. Okay.
everyone everyone likes battleships, and we already knew that. We knew that you guys liked it. So what it just like one of the going back to the Reddit thread about the battleships, it was kind of like writing the Winter Stars blog. That's also sort of tactically done in a way to create those conversations, because despite what many say, we do listen to literally everything that you say about this, and it's just super important that you know those conversations happen so we can read them.
Yeah. So posing a problem rather than offering a solution is kind of what we wanted to do with this. Go ahead, brainstorm, go crazy. Well, maybe something like insanely smart comes out of it, and that happens all the time. Also, like there's a lot of stuff that happened on Reddit and on our own forums where you're like, that guy literally got it, like the whole plan just to end,
Yeah,
and
that
you're like, ah, oh,
it
okay.
actually happens, and we do go, oh shit. So just keep putting it out there. You might be right, but at least you'll get some good ideas out there.
And
Yeah.
sometimes even bad ideas can lead to a good idea, which is why they keep me around. If you get enough bad ideas, eventually someone's going to be like, no, this is why it's bad, and come up with something brilliant.
It's actually, you mentioned the slow reflexes, and that's not why I say it. I was I'd never liked the Marauder, how bad it was at or not used at the point at the time. So I pushed a lot for the Marauder to be buffed, because I thought like that's kind of like a very expensive ship, but you kind of get what you pay for if you're like good enough, but it's not super complicated to use. It's still a battleship in that sense. It has a powerful ability, and now you're like, okay, it's a step above T1 battleships, and you kind of like, okay, it's a mastery curve, and it's cool, but you really pay the extra to get it. And for me, like in a new player progression or kind of intermediate at that point, you're like, okay, the Dreadnought to me is a natural predecessor, comes after that, because you're like, okay, it's awesome. It's a million times bigger or like heavier in that sense. Uh, but it's kind of point and click, and you have Siege, which is awesome, and it's all a science fiction kind of fantasy, and it just like feels badass. So as a second or third aspirational goal for someone who just wants to kill stuff and blow up stuff and be in a better ship, that is a very natural or kind of easy progression for a lot of people. And I think that's something that I'm very much about. Uh, but the Dreadnought specifically, I'm a fan of, because you are now a real asset to anyone and any corporation. You can make money, you can be on home defense, you can be a part of Dreadnought, Dreadbomb. So now you're like, you can fly and you bring a value. So like that's what I think is very important with the Dreadnought.
Okay. We have limited time. Let's go over to Upwell Structures for a moment. What do you see are the current problems with Upwell Structures? And let's start from there.
Where to begin?
Well, yeah, start with the low
Okay,
hanging
I'll
fruit.
start with the simple thing. Like there are a handful of features or aspects of Citadels that have proven to be not, I would say, evergreen. Like they sounded good on paper, and then we had a bit of proliferation. We tried to kind of patch that up a bit with structured cores to try to put more anti on the field, so you have to pony up something to build one. Which was against the original design goal. It was like structures for everyone, and that was just the vision at the time, and that it is what it is. They have, like I said about the manufacturing, so they have manufacturing issues, and there's infinite space storage and all that stuff. It put all of the targets back into the station, into this kind of behind three walls defense, which I think is something that I really want to kind of undo a bit or redo in a different way to put more. That's the tactical space objectives that I'm talking about. Like I would like to go back. I'll be honest about it. Go back to some of these structure modules are just out in space, not necessarily destructible, but sabotagable or something in that vein. Maybe it doesn't happen first with structures. We will just go through that, and then the defensibility of them is pretty boring, I would say. The tether is now it's a lot of it is solved. So I would say that combat is the primary thing, and then how can we use them as interesting tactical objectives or appendixes of them become small, medium, large objectives. But again, these are just top of my head, what I've been thinking about for some time. We're taking the Reddit thread completely seriously and harvesting that for everything, and then talking to our CSM and trusted advisors.
Yeah, when so many people, this is something that kind of like CCP Paragon was talking about. When so many people come together and collect ideas in a very well thought out, very well put together way, like High and the like all the FCs that put together their I guess we can call it like a structure manifesto or something. Like that's incredibly useful for us. It gives us a starting point on where to go. And in that thread, there's just a lot of people listing problems, not coming up with solutions. So I just want to give a shout out to all those FCs that contributed. We're not only listening to you, of course. Like there are other voices that need to be heard and other aspects to contribute with. Sweet, I got outshined by a dog. Dogs are way better than me. Everyone's paying attention to it. But either way, that's a level of communication that we absolutely adore, and we really, really appreciate when people come together to do that.
And just going sort of on that back to the original from extraction to production dev blog, like those conversations were something that we had to induce in a sense, which led to 8,000 forum replies, 50, 100 Reddit threads, thousands Reddit comments in the span of a few weeks. So this time around, let's get the conversation going right now.
Okay. There was some discussion at one point about a small, fast to deploy structure that could be used, more aggressively and online quickly. Is that something you've heard talk about recently, or is that sort of sleeping at the moment? Is that on the back burner?
It's very seldom that someone asks me, "Have you ever thought about this?" And I haven't. Like I
Well,
have
no, you've
a
thought about
very
it.
big list of ideas, and which is basically I'm a collector.
Okay.
If someone says something, I'm like, okay, I'll park that, post it on my Miro board, and say like, okay, I'll save it for later or check it out. A lot of the comments or like conversations a few months ago were like, hey, I don't have an NPC station to stage from. Can you give me an NPC station to stage from? And we're like, that's not a very good design, but what are the alternatives to do what you're asking? Like, how can I deploy something or get this done so I can have similar safety as an NPC station and have suitable anti on the field so I don't just spam it and go through those motions. And that's something like that you're mentioning is very interesting to me, has always been. How do you project over without jump fatigue and everything else, without having to build an NPC station in every region, which is like just doesn't go, like that's never going to happen. Like I can almost confidently state that. And how do you give players the tools to do exactly that thing, to do a sneak attack, a powerful sneak attack, for example? How do we go on a dread roam tomorrow without having to, deploy, plan, log out, all that stuff? Like how can I just do this, but like with some incentive? And those are the kinds of things that like just keep coming up, and I think a structure of some type fits the bill. We just need to solve it. I will say that maybe an NPC station might get built if they actually build it themselves. So if they have an AI that wants to go into nullsec and collect all the minerals that they need to, and then eventually build an NPC station, I think that would be acceptable. But we're just not going to plop them down all over the place.
Yeah, and that would be something that the players could interfere with as well, right? Because it would just be like if a player were trying to build something. Like these
Yeah.
are some of like the future visions that we have. Like now that we have the foundation that we can actually start to implement. Like really, really cool ideas. Uh, just stuff like that, and kind of like what Rattati was saying. Like dread bombs are cool. We can make dreads cost 1 ISK, and there would still be some. Okay, we're not gonna do that.
No.
We can make dreads cost like almost nothing, and there would still be instances where dread bombs are like very hard to pull off because there are like challenges with logistics. And some people say, "Oh, just put an NPC station there." No, obviously not the answer. But there are problems associated that we can solve without putting an NPC station there. We can have something new where it would allow people to come up with that utility and have that gameplay and have a counter to that gameplay and just give people more options. I think that's like kind of the main takeaway is that we have built the foundations and shored up every like leaky area over the past 2 years that we can build on of these things and provide you guys new tools to go have fun in space, whether that's building something, destroying something, or just hanging out with your friends.
Yep. Let's talk about making money in Eve so you can support your PvP habit or not. I've been watching ratting going down as a percentage of what my alliance does.
Can you be more specific
on
when
a
you said?
daily.
Are you talking anoms? Compound anoms?
I'm seeing anything that involves a bounty
Raw-isk.
coming in from killing a rat. It could be in an anom, it could be on a gate. I mean, I'm seeing that number go down as a percentage of income from my alliance. What professions do you envision becoming more popular among the player base over, say, the next year? They need people are looking for what they can do to make some ISK. I get asked this regularly in my alliance. Of course, I'm in nullsec, so that that has an effect on what people ask me. But what advice do you have for these people? What do you think they'll be doing more?
I'll start with the pillars of wealth generation. So, taking a real world analogy, a society with only two pillars of income are always subject to high risk. What if this fails? You only have one thing. What if both fail? You have nothing. And we had bounties being like most of what came in, offset by mining. So it's basically more money, more inflation, but also mining and increased mining driving prices down. So you had basically hyperinflation, or the value of ISK really going down. This was also compounded by a botting RMT, and that's why we basically, the first thing that I worked on before I started doing the ecosystem for Living Universe kind of Talos Axiom stuff was to actually just build up capacity to tackle botting for almost a year. So a bit behind the scenes. So we had to tackle that. We had far too much RMT bounty coming in. Some of it funneled into RMT, some of it just inflation. So simply, we wanted to curb it at the expense of the other things. So you can always all see the MER. Blue loot is still now primary, or one of the big ones, and we didn't want to mess with multiple income areas at the same time. So we know wormholes are making a lot of money by blue loot, and we're also aware of abyssal runners in high sec and incursions and all that stuff. So it's all being tracked. We simply wanted to start with the two main offenders, which were mining and bounties, try to get them under control and then up again. So at this moment, we're basically, the plan would be to, raise all boats in that sense. So I don't really want to nerf anything in 22 if I can avoid it. So going in and saying, oh, you can't run more than, or having incursion or whatever, like I'd rather try to bring bounties up to that standard. Second of all, we tackled, we have now the ability with diamond rats and better NPCs to actually do better content. And if you've seen it throughout the year, we have been doing pretty fundamental experiments with better and harder dungeons. You can see the exploration sites being very, very hard, almost excruciatingly hard, and unfortunately a bit underpaid. So we're working on that. You're seeing the Dreadnought site being hard. It was way harder before they fixed it day before launch. I I don't know if you could complete it, even if the game designer that made it could complete it. I'm not sure if it would have kind of passed. So we're trying to do that, and we're also trying to do different kinds of kind of capture gameplay in the sense that you want, and this is hard to explain, and I'm not going to go really deep into it, but we want to be able to give a PvE challenge, and to do so, we have to control who can attack you at the same time. It doesn't mean that we don't want you to be out of space. We want you to be in space while you're going there and doing some stuff and prepping, and then you do the PvE content. Uh, maybe a bit uninterferable in some cases because we designed the system to be fun for the PvEer, and sometimes that's a big portion of Eve players who like doing PvE on their own, and we're gonna keep doing it regardless. PvP is the top of the pyramid. It absolutely drives everything, but there's a place for good, solid PvE, something that people have talked about a very long time. But no one wants to do PvE if they're just ganked every single time they go into the site. So we're trying to work in this space. It's hard, but we'll try to figure that out over time and with your help. On that, so we want to introduce these windows of opportunity when you can be attacked doing that. So that's the plan of action. But the Dreadnought sites are also, they're expensive. You get pretty well paid out, like maybe not compared to everything in the game, but it's pretty decent. Maybe if Dread prices go down, the risk and reward, or the return investment goes up. So
We also
point
kind of
being,
have to
we're
fix
working
the
on trying to
mutaplasmas.
make more and better content, and now we
Yeah.
have at least 5 new dungeons or sites that have a lot of new stuff in them. And we have a lot of learnings from the trig sites and the abyssal sites. And what we want to do is, in this year, simply do much better nullsec combat content. So that means revisiting the sovereignty anomalies, or doing new ones, or doing better ones, or a combination of that, adding some kind of a new challenge into some of these so they're not as stale and solved. But if we make them harder to do, we can give you more money for doing them. But at the state they're in, we can't just turn up the dial because they are just too easy to kite or do something. But our
Right.
latest content, if you played the Winter Nexus sites and everything, it's way, way, way better than the Solve anomalies. So we don't need to do a lot of work to make them challenging, and then we can up the rewards a lot.
Yeah,
Right.
just to chime in, I know we have got limited time. Sorry, Carnaris, I hope you didn't cut you off in the question. That's super important. But I just want to emphasize that in the last 2 years, we've tinkered with a lot of systems, and that's a bit of an understatement. We've like shook up how players know how to work the game. Like we have veterans who's been playing like myself since like 2005, 2006, where we just knew how to make ISK. Like, how do I make ISK? Oh, I do this. Do I want to haul long limb rows in 2004? Yeah, okay, I can do that to make a quick buck. Do I want to run this DED site and chain it? Do I want to go hunt officer rats? Like everyone knew how to work it. The system was solved by a lot of players, and they would pass it down to the next generation of players, which is great. But we did a lot of shaking. We messed with a lot of like sacred systems to add more dynamic challenges, add new challenges for people to figure out and to master. Like you guys are you E players are the smartest people in gaming, and that's not me just patting myself on the back because I'm one of you, but like it's an just an objective fact. Like, and we're giving we want to create systems where we can give you new puzzles to solve. And we really do believe that we've like shored up the foundations enough. I keep saying that, but we've like learned so much where we can start introducing new things. And as CCP Rattati mentioned, like 2022 is all about adding new stuff, new challenges, new choices. Like that's a huge part of our ethos going into to the near future.
As you design these new things, please keep in mind corporation income also, because 2 years ago, my guys were on average making more ISK each, and more of it was then being given up to the corporation as part of a tax.
Yeah.
But over time, not only has their income gone down, but the percentage of it that was built in taxable by the system went down. And then market income got cut in half with CCP taking more out of that. A lot of things have gone down, 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 down.
Yeah. And
Omeka mentions the ESS reserves, but those are, the money in the ESS reserve draining all goes to whoever it is got the key in low sec. It doesn't go to who put the effort in to drain it or risk their ships. It goes to someone else. So just keep in
I
mind
empathize completely,
corp
and
income.
this is
Right.
this is a very unflattering feature that I would love to get done, which is a corporation-wide wealth ledger, so that you can tax equally. And I can see this in so many things. This transfer from raw ISK, because that's the nicest thing. Like you can tax that freely. You have the mining ledger, but you don't have the loot ledger. You don't have the LP ledger in that sense. And you don't. It's very hard when you are, for example, trying to tax on. Do you tax on sale or do you tax on the on the point of entry into the game? I would love to be able to give this to corporation managers for sure, so you can tax equally across all of the activities. And I think, but this is the worst thing to sell to anyone. It's like, hey, we need to do a tax ledger for corporation CEOs. But I think I can do it. I think it's fairly. It's not trivial, but like it's busy work. There's no mega solution that needs to be solved. The thing is, this comes up also about like a lot of the conversations about passive mooning, moon mining, and just all of it was like, oh no, but this was great for me being able to tax the right person. Like that was the kind of a lot of incentive for a lot. Like it's a good activity because it's taxable, versus it's good because it pays well, or like.
Yeah,
So
the moon prints out X a month. I will take this percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
It's
you have the
predictable
moon,
income.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So like this is one of the things that I'll try to push very hard on in
Thank you.
22, even if it's not sexy.
All right. Speaking of sexy, are there any new ships coming in the next year?
I would just I'm not going to comment on it, but we have ships that we have the trig ships, all obviously the mining ships, and I would love to be able to use them for something cool. I would love to be sun mining with a Triglavian sun miner. I think that's like one of the coolest things that I've seen in the game. Will it happen? I'm like it. I take no responsibility for that.
Okay.
It's a more complex situation with like art resources and everything. So, but I hope at FanFest we'd be able to see some concept art or something uh, to get stuff done.
Okay.
I'm actually
We're
very
low on
interested
time.
in just bringing some
Okay.
underused ships back to business. Like that's almost as good. Not as good, but almost as good.
Edencom. They're underused. Are Edencom ships likely to get looked at?
I heard there's a mystical Skybreaker doctrine somewhere that like might get used one day, but I don't know. It's I haven't seen Edencom being asked for more than other ships specifically, but I would be happy to see like or CCP Rise and Psych would solve it.
Eve FanFest 2022. Can we expect a keynote, a big keynote?
So Berger is already writing the keynote, like, and he's been writing it in his head for at least 6 months before he knew that we were going to have a fan fest. So like he is just antsy at the moment. There's going to be a keynote. There's going to be like I don't know what is actually going to happen because I'm not the runner of that. CCP Goodfella is, and but I hope it's the best we can do with COVID. Like that's like I'm as optimistic as I can be, but I can't wait to be there and talk about crazy stuff.
Is your ecology team likely to do a panel or a presentation at FanFest?
I would assume so. Like I think all doors are open for that. Just again based on how many people can be in a room together and all that like COVID stuff. I honestly like I hope so, but there's nothing stopping us from doing so if it's possible.
Yeah, we were already talking about the really cool FanFest ideas. I want to chime in like for questions like, is there going to be a new ship, or what is some new roles for some old ships, or things like that. That's a great topic for this little get together called FanFest in the beginning of May. You guys should definitely, if you can come. Iceland's a beautiful place, but if you can only watch online, that's cool too. We'd love to have you. The whole thing will be like on our Twitch channel and then pre-recorded on YouTube. But I was talking with CCP Paragon and CCP Goodfella and CCP Convict about cool ideas for FanFest, and let's just say like there's already a very nice list drawn up of great things. It includes player presentations, the Invasion World Tour Finals, which meant to happen at the previous FanFest, will be happening live. All the players have committed to doing that, so that's kind of an announcement here for the first time. So you'll be able to see those players PvP in their 2v2 format live, which I think is going to be kind of cool. Builds off of a little bit of fun that we had with the Alliance Tournament. Alliance Tournament 17 also coming back next year. Huge shout out to CCP Aurora and the rest of the team who made that a reality. But yeah,
I'm
lots of
just
fun
sad that I
stuff.
can't. I'll probably do an ecosystem like economy presentation because I didn't like I forgot to share my Miro board today, so I'll have to save it for January or a FanFest.
Okay, and we're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. We do have a plan for what we're going to do next, which is I think we're going to raid over to the Talking and Stations after show. Is the producer okay with that? Is that what we're doing? Okay, great. Thank you. He doesn't normally speak, but he did. Maybe only I heard it. Thank you very much, guys. Okay. First, I want to say thank you to CCP Rattati, CCP Paragon, and CCP Swift for coming out, facing a tough crowd today, and answering a bunch of questions for us. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in to listen. I apologize we couldn't get to all of your questions in an hour. Hopefully you can join us over in Talking and Stations and ask some more questions there with the team there.
And I'll also say for CCP Paragon and myself, we'll be going through like the forum threads and stuff. And if you have questions that are like really pressing, we'll do our best to answer them as well, so you guys do get an answer to your questions. I'm sorry, every time on any talk show about Eve, I tend to go on forever and ever, kind of like I'm doing now. So I ate up a lot of time, but we'll make sure you guys get answers to your questions. There's no bad questions. And thank you very much, Carneros, for being our moderator today and coming up with some crackers for us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Join us. And if you're collecting loyalty points like a lot of people are, staying with us for the stream's raid earns you a few loyalty points. Don't be shy redeeming them down below to get your skins.